The Walt Disney Studios live-action remake of The Little Mermaid. Well, it's not getting a lot of love from top critics out there on Rotten Tomatoes, but will that matter? Or will this finally be a movie that can put Disney over the vaunted $1 billion mark, something that has eluded them at the box office since 2019? Let's get into it. Renegade Online. Well, folks, welcome back. Another great day here at Valiant Renegade. It's good to see everybody out there once again. And if you are like one of the many folks watching this video not yet subscribed to this channel, please take a moment and turn that little red subscribe button to gray. Hit that like button, hit that notification bell, share this sucker out on the social medias, and of course, please do leave a comment before you head out the door today. So right off the bat, early reviews for The Little Mermaid have started to pour in on Rotten Tomatoes. Now, one of the things that we have shifted gears on a little bit over time is not simply looking at the raw critics score that you can see here, but that is to click in and look at the top critics score. This, by Rotten Tomatoes' own definition, are the best of the best critics. These critics have to go through a review process with an internal board at Rotten Tomatoes, meeting certain very lengthy experience criteria that they have set forth. You can go to the website yourself and find out how this works. But when you look at this score, you think 70%, well, that's not bad at all, and that would be completely accurate. But let me show you something. If you click in, you get a choice of all critics, which stands at 70%, or you can go to top critics and thereby eliminate potentially quite a few of the Walt Disney Company Pixie Dusters, which is at 45%. That is very rotten on Rotten Tomatoes. Now, of course, again, a lot of people don't always put a lot of credence into Rotten Tomatoes, and that's just fine. We don't always either, although we take it on a case-by-case basis, depending on what movie we're talking about and how critics respond to it. So, for example, things like Super Mario Brothers that critics didn't care for because it lacked a lot of substance based on their overall reviews that they did on it, really didn't matter because audiences were so hyped for it and were given the fan service they wanted. The movie did really well. There still seems to be a lot of question out there about what this movie is going to turn out to be, and fans aren't near as excited from the surface level at this point to go see this film as they were for the Super Mario Brothers movie. But standing at 45%, let's read what some of these top critics had to say on Rotten Tomatoes. From Vox, the remake's main sin is that it's visually confusing, if not altogether aesthetically unappealing. Now, this is a comment that we've seen more and more again as more footage from this film has come out. And you look at things like Flounder, for example, or Sebastian. Yeah, we know it's a quote-unquote live-action remake, a lot of CGI integrated in with live actors. That integration seems to be giving people some cause for concern, because Flounder looks a little creepy, to be quite honest with you, and Sebastian is not far off. From the Associated Press, for all its pizzazz, everything about this Little Mermaid is just more muted. Miranda's new songs are odd, too, and don't seem to fit. And that was another question a lot of people had. When the first teaser came out, we got Halle Bailey singing the iconic Part of Your World, and that ignited a lot of folks, including myself, and I said, look, if they really stick to the original Broadway score for this 1989 animated classic, they're going to have a hit on their hands because that's what made the movie popular. That's what kept little kids going back time and time again, spending tons of money, billions of dollars over the years on soundtracks, copies on VHS, and later DVD and Blu-ray, not to mention all of the toys and merchandise that The Little Mermaid has sold. This should be an easy layup for the Walt Disney Company, but for some reason, they felt it necessary to have Lin-Manuel Miranda come in and create several new pieces of music for it that weren't in the original. And if you believe the Associated Press, they don't seem to fit into the movie at all. Then we've got Carla Meyer from the San Francisco Chronicle. The Little Mermaid origin story lacks room for this more feminist take. It's simply not deep enough. Whoa, that's from the San Francisco Chronicle. They're saying that the feminist overtones that Disney has inserted into the Little Mermaid remake just aren't good enough. I mean, this movie can't win at this point. That's pretty harsh coming from a publication that is incredibly politically aligned with what the Walt Disney Company has become in 2023. How about Aisha Harris? My nostalgia for the 1989 Little Mermaid, a movie I can quote by heart, has probably never been stronger than it is now. Neither has my wearied sense of deja vu. And from Kron, occasionally the familiar pleasure of this fish out of water story cuts through the murky execution, like a trinket catching a ray of moonlight while sinking to the seafloor. Not terribly enthusiastic praise. And from the Los Angeles Times, what is on screen too often feels like wan, second-rate imitation, and the few differences seem motivated less by a spirit of imagination than one of joyless anxiety. Now, between the Los Angeles Times and the San Francisco Chronicle, these are two major California publications that are just seemingly taking this movie to task. And quite frankly, this is a live-action remake that Disney built to basically appease these exact type of people. Or how about Slant Magazine? The Little Mermaid feels more or less like a 2-hour-plus cosplay with the texture and gravitas of a Disneyland sideshow. How about the New York Post with, despite real actors, CGI, and brand new material, Mermaid is the studio's latest flesh and blood cash grab that's more lifeless than far better two-dimensional painted drawings. Or from Inverse, The Little Mermaid is arguably the best live-action Disney remake since Kenneth Branagh's Cinderella. The splendor is there, the romance is crafted with care, but something's still missing. AV Club, its most iconic moments are borrowed and copied wholesale, serving little more than a reminder of simpler days watching clamshell VHS tapes released from the Disney Vault. Maybe that's enough for some people, but maybe, like Ariel, we should want more. Or how about Globe and Mail, a thoroughly pointless cash grab of a thing? This new Little Mermaid is one of the most uninspired films to slither out of Disney since the company started raiding its own vault. And New York Magazine, as the studio has done with other live-action remakes, Disney betrays its own lack of imagination and essential misreading of what made its original children's fare such a joy to audiences in the first place. From The Hollywood Reporter, a major Hollywood trade magazine, a ho-hum adaptation buoyed by a lovely lead turn. Or from IndieWire, for now, The Little Mermaid exists outside the very world it so wants to be a part of, one already so lovingly rendered in its predecessor, real or not. From The Independent in the United Kingdom, there's a real stink of obligation to everything that exists around Bailey and her star-making turn. And finally, from The Guardian, Bailey is both the finished film's only unmitigated triumph and the best argument for this whole live-action remake enterprise in one shimmering mermaid core package. Now, one of the things that doesn't surprise me at all is the praise for the performance by Miss Bailey in this film. And one of the things I've been consistent about since day one is that she's a very, very pretty lady. And she seems to have a very talented and capable Broadway caliber voice. That first teaser trailer we got, again, of her singing Part of Your World was something that was, quite frankly, very stunning and surprising to me. I did not expect that. But at the end of the day, we always talk about commercial viability of projects. And when you cast an actress like Miss Bailey into a role that is very visually recognizable to a large audience of a very popular intellectual property, you're going to run the risk of having audiences give it pause and say, why does Ariel look like that now? It's marketing like this that has continued to plague Disney time and time again. They're doing it to themselves. A black mermaid would have changed her life, says Little Mermaid star Halle Bailey. I don't get this. I don't remember in the 80s and the 90s little girls of any different background being upset or being unable to identify with Ariel because she looked like what she looked like. But apparently today, this is a real problem for Disney, or at least this is a problem that Disney perceives that its audiences have. And I still fail to understand how this works. I watch movies all the time full of actors and actresses that I can't visually or personally identify with, at least as a matter of their skin tone, that I thoroughly enjoy no matter what. But once again, Disney always seems to operate these days from a mindset of trying to appease some type of political or social faction that is out there that thinks that this is the way to go. Meanwhile, other studios are just making good movies and casting folks and characters that they believe are going to have the broadest commercial appeal. And that's regardless of what they look like. So will these reviews even matter at this point? Or is this a movie that is review-proof? Things like Fast X and Super Mario Brothers that didn't enjoy great critic scores either. That's yet to be determined. This is certainly a movie that is aimed towards younger children, and families are going to bring their kids to go see it. The big question is, what happens after the first weekend once we get actual audience reaction? And as a reminder, one of the big concerns I had about this film is the fact that it has a 2-hour and 15-minute runtime. That's 45 minutes or 50% longer than the original Little Mermaid. That's a long movie for little kids to go to, especially 2 and 3 times. But here we have the final projections coming in to this week from Box Office Pro with a $90 to $112 million opening 3-day range and a $115 to $143 4-day weekend, because of course we've got Memorial Day Monday that it's going to get baked into this. Now, if this airs to the high side of these figures, that would be a very admirable start for this kind of film. Now, of course, we don't know what the international box office is going to look like, and with a $200 million plus, maybe 250 or more production budget on this kind of film, this is really going to need a lot of help from the international markets. And if you're wondering how things might go for The Little Mermaid overseas, well, according to CBR, The Little Mermaid is poised to flounder as Disney's worst 2023 opening in China, perhaps one of their worst openings ever. While getting a release date can be seen as a success on its own, recent estimates suggest the film is likely to be Disney's worst performing Chinese release this year. According to Chinese box office observers, such as Luis Fernando, the film earned just $13,000 from ticket pre-sales for its opening weekend, indicating a severe lack of interest from China moviegoers. If this thing actually pulls off somewhere close to $400 million domestically, Disney can probably call this a win, at least to one degree or another, but there's a lot of competition coming out in the near term. But we're going to have to wait and see how that plays out. Again, this is another Disney film that's going to need in the vicinity of $800 million or so globally at the box office to get to a break-even standpoint, probably somewhere in that range. This is pretty much what Disney is spending lock, stock, and barrel on each and every film, and word has it that the marketing spend on this movie is pushing even higher than what we typically see with your average Marvel film. So let me know your thoughts. Will this movie defy the odds for Disney and finally give them a $1 billion picture, something they haven't had now in about 4 years, at least one that they've made themselves? Avatar: The Way of Water, of course, is a James Cameron production that Disney was blessed enough, thanks to the Fox purchase, to be able to distribute. But we're talking about projects that Disney is producing internally at its own in-house studios. They really need a win here, and maybe this will give it to them. I think for this picture, we're going to have to wait and see. It's going to take a few weeks before we really know, because it's hard to pin down just how this one is going to do. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think this movie is going to be a big success for Disney, or is this going to be another mediocre run-of-the-mill kind of thing, or is this going to be a total flop? I really have a hard time pinning this one down at this point, but I want to hear from you. But make sure you stay tuned. We'll be keeping up with this one as the box office for it opens and continues in the next few weeks. And until next time, take care.